Hey, Amy, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I had no idea what to expect in terms of the number of people, but wow, this is awesome. That's great.
Yeah, as it turns out, us hub folk kind of like to hang out together, and so we do this monthly meeting, and it tends to be fairly well attended, and we cover topics all over the place. Christy Athens is having a laugh at that. um, and we work together often. So yeah, we're a fairly large group. It's always fun to see everybody show up for this. And that case study, I don't know how many people sent it to me. It was like, hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Which is why I reached out to you. I was like, we probably should get these guys on one of our calls and have them
That's
talk
funny.
about it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Just happy to share about that and just see what questions everybody has. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go. It's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Amy, just so you know who we are the Oregon Food Hub Network. We are a working group of Oregon Community Food System Network. And we cover, in terms of what a hub is, we do a lot of different things that folks in this group are, farmer-owned cooperatives. Some of them are nonprofits that have weekly online marketplaces. There's a lot of weekly online marketplaces that are both nonprofit and for profit. Some of the folks that tend to join this call will be economic development districts. We have some fisher folk, and I see Laura Anderson's here today. We have folks from all over the community food system world. We sort of take an inclusive definition of what a food hub can be. If you think you're food hubbing, or you want to food hub, or you're interested, you can join this call. So there's a lot of different kinds of folks on this call. And if you want to start out with introducing yourself to the group, who you are, what you do, lots of them are probably familiar with you because they use LFM. And then if you could walk us through a little bit about that case study. And then in particular, we're interested in understanding, what is LFM's part? What is the technology part of this partnership? We've had Elliot on a call talking about institutional buying, I think back in September or October. So we do have some familiarity with the Pacific Northwest Food Hub Network. But I think we'd really love to know from you, like, what is the technology doing and how is the technology helping this process?
cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. And I do have like kind of a somewhat short slide deck that'll like give us some visuals to take a look at as we are talking through things. But before I jump into that, hello, I do recognize lots of names and faces. So thanks so much for having me, and excited to chat with you all and also hear what your questions are. As I think probably those that know us know that I'm actually sitting in Oregon too. Even though we have customers all over the US and Canada, we happen to be based here and we're founded here, and are excited to just see the amazing work that's happening in our home state. So yeah, thanks for doing all this heavy lifting that you're doing, both figuratively and for real. Great. So and Sydney mentioned that we wrote up a case study about year one of the Northwest Food Hub Network. It's downloadable from our website. If you haven't run across it yet, I'm happy to share a link, and I'll do that here in the chat in a little bit, after my quick little talk here. But if you'll just bear with me while I get to the right spot. Okay, good. I think we're all set. Share my screen. I do have just a quick little slideshow of some visuals to look at. We can probably skip over this part since I've already mentioned our background. I probably didn't mention though that we've been around for a while. It's been about 14 years now. And really the food hub networks are really exciting for us because I think when we started the company, we didn't call it that, but that was sort of what we envisioned happening. We didn't realize it would take as long. and all the work that needed to get done and get in place before they were fully realizable, so to speak. But yeah, we are really just, our vision is an equitable local food ecosystem that we just support and enable to happen in all the different sales channels and ways that local food needs to be sold, whether that's institutions, which tends to be a pretty big focus of food hub networks, because the sales volumes are there to sort of allow some of those costs related to logistics to be borne. So anyway, I know Elliot has probably gotten into some of those details with you, but I'll share a little bit about the Northwest Food Hub Network, just for those of you that haven't read the guide or maybe aren't familiar with it yet. It consists of 3 cooperative hubs that go across kind of the upper part of the Northwest, starting in the Seattle area, Puget Sound Food Hub. Then you skip over the Cascades and land in Spokane for Link Foods. And then you skip over the Rockies and you hit Western Montana Growers Co-op in Missoula. So those are the 3 hubs, and all of the producers that are associated with them is what consists of the entire supply. There are 4 partner organizations also, which sounds like you've already heard from Elliot from Kitchen Sink Strategies, whose official role is the sales broker for the Northwest Food Hub Network. They also, I think, do a lot of sort of value chain coordination type work as well. So, in the early stages of a food hub network, there's obviously a lot of lifting to be done that are beyond just brokering sales, and they do a lot of that. Mission West is the backbone organization for the network. So they applied for the grant that I'll tell you about a little bit more about here in a moment, but they coordinate the operations and communications. And we've seen that to be a pretty vital role for the functioning of the network. And it's really encouraging to see you all meeting on a regular basis. I think that's a really good start if you ever decide to move into a sort of integrated transactional network. It's what you're doing now is like an amazing starting point, and getting to know each other and what challenges and things that everybody has in place already. So we provide the technology backbone for both the network as well as the ERP platforms for each of the hubs. So our platform does all of the technology lifting in terms of all the sales and communication. And then Farm Fair is also involved in the project, and they provide consulting on best practices for the network, as they've been involved in a number of networks, including their own that they had originally founded in Ohio. So all of those organizations pull off the Northwest Food Hub Network. So it's not a small amount of lifting, especially in the early days, but have accomplished quite a lot in a short period of time. Did want to just kind of do a quick visual here of where, just a map of the hubs, which are the center of each of those sort of hub and spoke systems there. And then the outer ring there is the producers that work with each of the hubs. So that's where they all are. It sort of doesn't totally get to how challenging it is, because it's hard to see the mountain ranges here and how, some of the trucking pieces are pretty challenging, but that is the map. I did want to share a little bit about the timeline of the network as well, because they didn't just land upon $1 million in new institutional sales in 2022. And having never worked together or having, no understanding or knowledge of each other. There was a lot that went into making that happen before 2022 even started. And it starts way back in the 2010s, when many of the hubs started just informally collaborating. I know Western Montana and Link collaborated on a group gap project. There's been some sourcing of product from Link has sourced product from Puget Sound for a number of years to fill some gaps that they often experience in the wintertime when it's a little cold in their regions. So they've been transacting, at least doing some transactions with each other, as well as collaborating on just best practices and like, how do you do this? And how do you handle this problem? Pretty regularly since before the network started and was formalized in March of 2020. So it was in March of 2020 that the 3 hubs in particular got together and decided, in order to reach institutional sales customers, they felt like they needed to work together, and that they would be better off working together than just kind of going it totally alone themselves. So that was March of 2020. And, roughly a year and a half later, the group was awarded the Regional Food System Partnership Grant. And 2022 marked the first year of that grant being in place. And the focus in that first year, as you can tell by the $1 million in new sales, it was really around just building up that demand for new customers within each of those hubs networks. So that was what Elliot and his team really focused on. And I'm sure he shared some of those details with you already. Looking forward, just building on some of that success and focusing on the logistics and really wanting to support regular transactions across that network. So product moving from the Spokane region into both directions, and vice versa, product moving across that sort of supply chain is really what the focus is looking forward, to just fully realize the goals of the network. So the first year, in addition to the new sales that they've experienced, they did a pretty cool project with, they call it Montana Marinara. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with it already, but it's a combo of USDA tomatoes, processed with like roasted vegetables from Western Montana Growers Co-op producers to create this like much more nutrient dense marinara sauce that over 150 school districts across the state of Montana have served to its students in the last couple of years. So it's been a pretty phenomenal project that I know their Office of Public Instruction is really excited about continuing, and they're going to ramp it up even more this year. So it's made a big difference in the bottom line of the producers, as well as, really creating visibility of the network's goals, across a wider sort of range than you might otherwise. And they, as a result of that project and amongst many others, producers have really increased their revenue as a result of that, the sales from the network. So there's challenges, of course. I've mentioned the geography challenges. And then one other challenge that I know continually comes up is just that balancing of priorities for staff, going from just being very sort of hub centric focused to then having this other thing that you're kind of taking care of and trying to decide on like what relative amount of work and energy is placed in those long-term versus short-term efforts. I know is an ongoing challenge and sometimes creates some inevitable good tension there. And then, there's a lot of strengths that they are able to utilize. First and foremost, I think, is that each of the hubs were established before they came together and decided to create the network. They had, I think, all eclipsed probably $2 million in sales before they formally created the network. And 2 of the 3 were far in advance of $2 million in sales. So they weren't looking for the network to save them as a network, as a hub. It was more like, how do we grow? How do we push our mission forward and keep things aligned? So that was one sort of area that I think has been a big strength for the network to function pretty effectively. They're aligned in terms of their business models. They're all cooperatives, producer cooperatives, which does make, decision making and just how each organization processes information. They do it in a similar way when they each individually. They have strong relationships already. I mentioned some of the projects they had done together already, so that they knew each other well, kind of like the work you're doing here. You've all since you do these calls monthly, it sounds like you probably all know each other pretty well, which is a really good starting place. The partner organizations are super committed. I mentioned the 4 of us, besides ourselves, of course, is Kitchen Sink, Mission West, and Farm Fair. And we've all really worked hard about working collaboratively and, really maximizing the benefit to the hubs and producers and making it all make sense. They all did start with shared technology. So each of the hubs individually were already using our platform also for their ERP and sales platform. I did want to talk to you a little bit about just kind of the basics around the technology. Most folks know us for our name, which is Local Food Marketplace, and that's what has been around for 14 years. It's the sales platform for hubs and farms that folks utilize and that you see probably most visibly, and any of the hubs that are on this call that use our platform utilize. We've rolled out over the last couple of years some new products that are supporting the network, one being Local Food Connect, which is our producer interface. It's our updated producer interface. And it's an important piece of the puzzle because it's a single point for farms to manage their supply across hubs and other online stores and in-person sales as well. So rather than them logging into multiple places to sell their products, they can do that in one. And then network is the part that weaves the hubs together and enables them to transact with each other and decide what products they're wanting to make available to the network, and decide how to mark those products up, and creates that consolidated network product list that's available to customers. So just visually, this is Connect. A farm can list their product from one place into multiple sales channels, online or in person. And then adding the network piece pulls all of the hubs together and allows them to share that supply across that and sell to buyers that the network is servicing. And in the case of the Northwest Food Hub Network, it's primarily institutional buyers. So I mentioned we focused a lot on just how to maximize the sales opportunities in year one. In 2022, the group utilized our network system to create a consolidated fresh list that was distributed to all the buyers. You can see kind of a printable version here, example from earlier in the winter. They also utilize the platform to create recurring orders in the system. That's been a really critical piece of realizing that $1 million in sales, is getting those recurring orders so they're kind of automated as much as possible in the system, so that Michelle and Elliot, when they're doing their sales outreach, they're focusing on new sales opportunities for the most part versus, reselling folks on a weekly basis for stuff they know they want. There's also a focus on just getting consistent processes and systems for each of the hubs in place. And so establishing, in the case of one of the hubs, they were not like carrying inventory. And in order to make a network like this function across such a wide range of miles, they needed to get inventory in place. And so that's been one of the focuses. There's been other areas as well. They also utilize very heavily all the reports and the data in the platform to, track their sales and to access the information that they needed to make better decisions and good decisions about what products to plan for this year. This year, we're focused on just building on the successes of sales and all the new relationships that the network created in 2022. There's now a network dashboard focused for network customers. You can kind of see a visual over here on the right-hand side. And it enables, it's primarily targeted at institutional buyers or buyers that are trying to reach certain metrics. They can run their own reports, download data. This has been super helpful for lots of folks doing farm to school. They can utilize the data in the system to populate all their reimbursement reports. I know the state of Washington uses that pretty heavily. it also allows them to feature products to those specific buyers, to make a specific product list available, and also direct access to their salesperson or sales broker, in this case, Kitchen Sink Strategies, and just see some high-level metrics about what they've purchased, and they can look at in a variety of ways. So it's a new dashboard and accessible information. They'll also, in the next couple of weeks, have access to network storefronts for each hub. So the way that their network operates is each of the hubs is still doing all the distribution and invoicing. And of course, Kitchen Sink is doing the brokering. And so each of the hubs has their version of the network storefront, because the products that they're servicing their customers with there is some overlap, but they are most heavily using products from their local suppliers. So they'll each have a co-branded storefront for the Northwest Food Hub Network with that hub, and that's how they're choosing to utilize that special sort of shopping experience that will be available to the network customers. We're also just expanding the inventory management and logistics pieces. There's a lot of cross-docking that's happening between hubs. There's also like the need to capture, those services of the products either getting cross-docked or that delivery fee or shipping fees that are getting added to the mix. So all of those things are getting added into the route management, as well as the purchase order and inventory management. So there's visibility across. Looking into 2024 will be a heavier and heavier focus on forecasts and production planning to yet still continue focusing on how to keep driving more sales to the farms and the hubs. Yeah, so those are, that was kind of a quick summary, or maybe not super quick, but hopefully quick enough. I mentioned we do have a downloadable piece that you're welcome to download from our website, and I'll pop the link here into the chat in a few moments, but I'm super happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Amy, that was great. I feel like every time we talk to the Northwest Food Hub Network, I feel like we learn a little bit more about what it is they're doing. So thanks for running through that again.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Totally.
I had a question, and I'm sure there's other questions out there as well. So LFM Network, it shows the products from all. If I'm a customer of Montana, let's say, and I log on to Montana's page and I want to see what's available, does it show all the product from all the hubs, or do the hubs select what products are shown in what other hubs?
Each of the hubs doing the sales to the customer chooses which items from the other hubs they want to list to the folks that they'll be distributing to. Yeah.
Okay.
That enables them to stay in alignment with their, own cooperatives, where their producers are like, I don't want you selling stuff that we, so they're not sort of adding to supply that already exists for their hub in that moment. So yeah. Yep. Cool. Yeah.
What other questions are out there?
I see a question about, are there hospitals in the buyer network? I do know that's a better question, for a full response to Michelle and Elliot, but I'm sure they won't mind me saying this. I know that was a challenging group for that. That has been a challenging group for them to access. I know they've had a couple of contacts, at least I've heard at meetings recently, that they've gotten pretty excited about. I think in Montana, actually. But I know that's in their sort of sites, but has not been as fruitful as most of the sales were farm to school or school oriented in that first year. So, yeah. Yep.
What other questions? Did you see that we have somebody who's buying from the Hub Network, by the way, Amy? Christy
No,
Adams.
where is this?
Christy, why don't you tell her?
Yeah, so I'm in very northeast Oregon, Wallowa County, and
Oh,
I was getting product from Walla Walla Food Hub.
uh-huh,
And then Chandler Briggs, who runs that,
uh-huh.
offered to sort of move stuff for me. So with Puget Sound, I'm just ordering through Chandler.
Okay.
And then with Farm Stand Foods,
Mhm.
I have my own account and I place my own order, but Chandler's moving it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we're starting to, and then Austin,
Uh-huh.
in Puget Sound just needed me to move some bison. Turned out I didn't end up doing it, but yeah, so we're creating this little channel, which is pretty, little
Oh my
side channel,
gosh.
which is pretty exciting.
I love that. That's amazing. I've heard the sort of Chandler getting involved with some product kind of getting back and forth, but that's super exciting. I love that. And I
Yeah.
think that is what exactly should happen, is like you kind of create sort of a great foundation and then you just keep adding to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun to build, and yeah, I'm not doing any wholesale sales, so I was
Yeah.
just going to transport that bison straight from our rancher, but yeah, it's been fun.
That's really cool. That's a great story. I like that. Chandler's really good at networking. Yes. Yeah.
What other questions do we have from this group today? There's a lot of LFM users here.
Yeah, I see lots of names that I know.
Yeah. No questions. I honestly can't believe that.
Well,
I
I'm
got
interested, and I kind of know the answer, but I'm interested in physically, how are things being transported between between Lincoln?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's I probably can't give you a total comprehensive number answer, but there's a lot of transport between Puget Sound and Link is happening with Puget Sound vehicles. They've decided to invest like in that to make it happen, because there have been challenges on, they were using a lot of third-party logistics folks to make it happen. And we're just finding like things would change at the last second, or like, it was just less reliable. And I think largely because the volumes were not quite there to make them as important as they needed to be for those providers. So yeah, so a lot of that, the sort of logistics is happening with Puget Sound trucks, between Spokane and like, sort of Northwest Washington. And then obviously with assists from folks like Chandler, right? Like there's, some other sort of routes getting developed as well that are sort of branching off of that. And then from between Western Washington and Link, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe there's a vision for a Western Montana truck to head to Spokane on some sort of basis. It gets pretty close, I guess, already, but they're going to kind of extend that route a little bit farther, I believe. But most of the products that have moved so far have either happened on an OGC truck or a Charlie's truck, I think. Yeah. So, yeah. That
Well,
has
that's
definitely
interesting.
been one of the challenges for like real effective flow of product across, but they've done some really good sort of problem solving and are figuring that out, and sort of with the sales increases they're able to like move a pallet, which kind of makes some of that make sense. They also, Link has this pretty cool sort of sister organization called Link Malt, which I don't know if you guys know about that, but it's like they make the malt for brewers, and they have a bunch of customers in like Western Washington, and like I don't even actually know where all their customers are, but they're all over the place, but they need to move product to Western Washington regularly. And so I think one of the things that they're sort of piggybacking on is like, okay, Puget Sound, here's some product for you to sell to your customers, and then to fill your truck and make it all the numbers work, here's some malt to take over at the same time. So that's also, I think, helps solve some of the financial challenges. So yeah, being super creative. Yeah.
Cool.
Amy, there's a question in the chat for you
yeah.
about value added products
Okay.
by makers or farmers in the network, or is anything being sold into grocery stores by the hubs? Which I know you're not a hub, so you may not know that answer.
Yeah. So, okay. Are there value added by makers or, yeah, there's a ton of value added products, being sold, through the network. I know there's a ton of yogurt getting sold, I believe, in Spokane from Puget Sound producers. I'm just like pulling out like examples in my mind. I know there's a bunch of legumes that are grown in Western Washington. Timeless Seeds, I believe, is the producer, getting sold in both of the other hubs. Those are just a couple of examples. There are others for sure. There's meat order happening. I think it's a link producer going to Western Washington. So anyway, so there's definitely a lot of stuff going on there. And then also some canned salmon, I believe, too, coming from Puget Sound. Anyway, yes, there's a lot of value added stuff. In some ways, value added can be easier, particularly if it's shelf stable. So yeah, so that's definitely happening. What's that?
Way easier.
Yeah.
Value added.
Yes.
And you get a much better margin on it too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then the second part of it was, are there any grocery stores in the mix? Each of the hubs, not including Link, but Western Montana and Puget Sound both sell a lot to grocery stores. But I think for the most part, those sales they already had managed those accounts themselves. So their internal sales team is managing those, I believe. Yeah. It wouldn't mean that it could not happen in another way, but that's just not how, like, the focus of Elliot and Michelle has primarily been on like the schools and other institutions. So yeah. Excuse me.
I am curious, Amy,
Mm-hmm.
if you know this answer, and it's sort of like between your expertise and Elliot. So I'm sorry to ask you a question that's sort of outside of your direct knowledge. Do you know, in the history of this network, why it became important to work as a network rather than, say, procuring more to serve their own network? You know, it sounds like they're working in this highly collaborative, really difficult way to work networked, rather than just purchasing from each other and making those movements. Since they're holding inventory, they've lost like the advantage of being box in, box out. Do you know what drove that, or is there something that is happening by being networked that is an advantage that you're aware of?
So I think you're asking a couple of different questions. One is around, like, just buying inventory from each other and just calling it a day.
Yeah. Which some of us are doing. We're working networked in that way by just purchasing from each other.
And that is usually, and you probably saw the slide, and I was wondering if that question was going to come up. Cullen from Farm Fair has a slide that kind of explains a typical continuum of Food Hub Network. It starts with like, let's talk with each other and like learn from each other and maybe work on some things together, to like, okay, we're going to buy and sell from each other. And sometimes that's where it stops. And then other times it's like, hey, it would make sense for us to work in a more integrated and collaborative way. And I think the decision to kind of take that next step of commitment, so to speak, is related to the opportunities. So most folks had not really tapped into, excuse me, much on the institutional sales side of things. Largely, well, I'm sure there was a lot of reasons: price, the hoops that you have to jump through to get to the buyers, and then the risk associated with, committing a large portion of your products to a particular group of buyers that, for whatever reason, if anything changed. So I think that was kind of the realization, was like, hey, we really need new resource. And a lot of times buyers of that type think regionally instead of just like, oh, I buy for the city of Seattle, or, they're like in charge of the Northwest of the United States kind of a thing. And so having a wider vision of the supply across the region, I think, was another sort of driving force. And I think most hubs realize at a certain level, you scale up and you scale up, and then you've got some choices you've got to make about your infrastructure. And you can either become a lot like a pretty traditional distributor if you kind of go one direction, or you can say, well, is there another way to scale up that doesn't involve that? And that allows us to stay close to the farms and close to that supply. And I think that was another driving force. Like, Western Montana and Puget Sound in particular, I think, had been scaling their sales up to the point where it was like, okay, we're going to have to get a bigger this and a bigger that and more this and more that. And it's like, at some point you become something a lot different than you started out being. So I think that's also been a big driving force. I shouldn't speak that for them, but I've heard a lot of that discussion. So, yeah.
That's a really helpful insight.
Yeah.
I think I've really struggled with, like, what is the driving force behind working in this particular collaborative way, because we all know it's probably hard. It's probably pretty challenging to negotiate all of the logistical things that you would have to negotiate, the structural things inside your organizations that you would have to negotiate. So why have these hubs chosen to do that hard work?
Yeah.
So thank you. That's really helpful. Do we have other questions for Amy while we have her? I know you have a hard stop coming up here soon, Amy.
Oh yeah, I'll just have to leave at 2. So I still have like 20 minutes. So yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good question though to ask, Sydney, because is it really needed in all cases? Probably not. Like, is it sufficient to just be buying and selling from each other and that be the end of it? I think it depends on like what the goals are, and if it makes sense for, I think shared resource is another reason, like, each of the hubs themselves, for anyone to kind of work with somebody like, Elliot's team may not make sense right away, just like to hire them individually versus to share that resource across. And then Elliot's job is better served by having a wider supply base too. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Other questions from this group for Amy? Here's your chance. All right.
Yeah, and if anybody has any sort of LFM specific questions, like, yeah, anybody who's in regular contact with us, you're welcome to reach out at any time. It doesn't have to be in this context at all. So we're super happy to help. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Last call on questions, guys. This is your last chance to ever question about the Pacific Northwest Food Hub Network again. Not really. I'm sure we'll talk about them again.
Yeah.
Amy, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us
totally.
and sharing what you know. It was super informative and helpful. If you could email me the presentation deck I will
Oh,
add
yeah.
it to our notes.
Okay.
And we have a couple folks that, well, we have several folks that aren't on the call today that I know will want to learn more about that. So it'd be
Okay.
great to have that.
Great. I'll put in the chat the link to the download just so it's accessible.
Oh, great.
Shin asked about VeggieRx. And whether there's any produce prescription programs. We have a number of customers running them. Yes, that's not one of the focuses of the Northwest Food Hub Network, if that was your question. Yeah. But yeah, it's a great program, and yes, it's exciting to see those things happen for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful context. I'm just curious because I know that I feel like there's been a lot more attention to prescription and VeggieRx, and potentially more funding for starting and continuing those types of programs. I'm just wondering, like, yeah, so that's helpful to know that there's already a few that are purchasing from y'all.
Yeah, they're not, just so you know, they're not purchasing from us, but our customers sometimes run VeggieRx programs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we just provide the technology. We don't own any of the food. Yeah. I know that can be confusing, especially as I was saying we as it relates to the Northwest Food Hub Network. So I apologize if that created confusion. Hopefully not. Yeah. Great. Well, great to see all the familiar names and faces, and great to meet you all. That this is our first time. I totally welcome anybody reaching out with any questions. I'll also put my contact info in here if you want to reach out via email.
Great.
All right.
Thank you so much for doing all of that.
Yeah.
It was really helpful.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, be in touch.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Okay.
Now that we
Yes,
know
I
you,
look
I'm
forward
sure
to
we
it.
will.
I look forward to an Oregon Food Hub Network transactions and seeing it all happen. It sounds like there's lots of stuff happening already. So
Yes, I think that will be happening.
Yay.
All right. Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Okay, bye.
All right. All right. So now we're moving on to the new burning questions portion of our calls. And Christy Athens, you sent a burning question about how our relationships with farmers market or other food, community food system related entities going between us food hubs and farmers markets and other orgs. If you want to ask it in your own words, that might be better than what I have than the justice I've done
Fine
it.
job. Although you scared me when I looked at the agenda and it said workshop with my name on it, and I was like, what am I doing today?
Well, I have that problem of what do I call these things that we do?
Right.
This conversation, it's a conversation amongst friends.
Right. Yeah, so I just wondered if anyone else sort of struggles with the public perception of the food hub as adversarial to farmers markets. I think that happens in my community, and I feel I have a very small community, so it might not be the same for somebody in a city, but I feel like there are people who feel loyalties and are conflicted about where to shop and things like that. So I thought other people might experience that as well.
Can I ask you a question, Christy? Is this coming from a place of you feel like maybe folks only have so many dollars to spread around, and where's the right place to spread it to? And or is the farmers market feeling like you're swooping in and stealing their sales? Can you talk a little bit more about what the specific friction is?
I think both of those things. There are only 7,500 people in this county. And so, if you start figuring out percentages of who actually will buy, who cares about local food and who is able to purchase it. More cows than people, 35,000 cows, 7,500 people. Yes. And yeah, and I've just gotten some, it's hard to, like, when I go out and see people and they say, how's your business? And I know they're not customers, and it's hard for me to answer that nicely. And so some of that is my own struggle with this small community, but some of it I wondered if might be more of a have more of a global footprint for us of, how do you all find your place within the sort of niche market that is local foods. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that helps. Erin Maidlow, I'm wondering if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah,
because you are also doing some similar things.
I do. I have big thoughts on that. I'm about to order a smoothie too. But so I'm actually on the Farmers Market Board, and our board president is on the Food Systems Committee with me. We're both co-chairs of our Food Systems Committee. So she's super supportive of, growing this food hub and, spreading the wealth. Like, there's definitely a need for both. The farmers market, our farmers markets go year round, and they have everything. There's produce all year round. But our market manager, I feel like he's just joining our Food Systems Committee, and I don't think I don't know, maybe they're not super in the loop on what a food hub is. And I do feel like some people feel like it's a competition when it's not at all. Like, it's expanding the entire market, which is what we're here to do, it's really frustrating when, to me, like, the farmers market should be sharing and participating in this discussion and, like, sharing out with the farmers. Like, we have our own farmer contacts, I contact all the farmers that are at the farmers market, but I feel like it should be a partnership with the farmers market where, how do we build this together? Like, the farmers market's only one day a week, and this is for, a different audience. Like, for us, restaurants are an area we want to target because it's hard for restaurants to go to the farmers market on a Saturday and buy what they need. So, like, we want to target that market so that we can make those deliveries on a Monday or, a different day. So why are we not partnering to get the word out? Like, hey, here's this other market that you can join, that your farmers can join. Please share this information. It is not happening here. So, and they're like, well, we don't want to have to monitor Facebook posts and whatever. I'm like, we don't have to. So yeah, I'm curious, like, how more established food hubs do it, and if the same thing happens or happened when you were first getting started, because it is really frustrating. It should not be a competition. Like, in no way has our organization ever wanted to be in the position of, like, being competitive with another. That's just not what a food system is, or a food system network. And so, yeah, I feel that, Christy. It's really frustrating, and I'm curious what everyone else thinks and how
We
you
have
navigate
a couple
that.
of, sorry, Erin. We have a couple of hands up. We had Twyla had their hand up. Carrie has her hand up. I can also say, Christy, that it would be worth talking to Katie Swanson about this issue, because I know that she has navigated that with the weekly online marketplace, and I believe has started to have some success changing the story. But when they first showed up on the scene, the farmers market did the same thing. Whoa, we're in the space and there's not room for all of us. So, what you're describing, I think, is clearly something that we're experiencing throughout the network. Twyla, do you want to?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to
Hi.
give a little bit of feedback about how things are going here. Our farmers market runs from Mother's Day through October in our town, the Sunday market, not the North Coast Food Hub. We are year round at the North Coast Online Farmers Market here at our food hub. Last week was opening market day. We are working very collaboratively, and we're very lucky to live in a community that supports that. Some of our board members are people who work at the Sunday market. And so we're really lucky to have that overlap. And we have decided there is an incubation booth that the Sunday market is doing, where members of our market who are smaller producers can test out, do like a test run to see whether or not it makes sense for them to participate in the Sunday market next year. So that there's 5 producers that are sharing a booth each week. It will be a different producer through those the months that is open. And once a month I will go to the Sunday market and help run the incubator booth, as well as participate in our outreach for SNAP customers, because the Double Up Food Bucks program in our community only is it only happens in 3 places. Our market, the Sunday market, and the Astoria Co-op. And so lately, or very recently, a few weeks ago, we collaborated on some marketing materials where we can provide members of the community an actual piece of paper that says these are the 3 pieces or places you can use your Double Up Food Bucks in order to stretch your SNAP benefit as a response to the SNAP benefit being cut quite significantly due to the pandemic in February. So we work very collaboratively together. Our goal here at the North Coast Food Web is to help people, producers, get to the next step in their, to wherever their goal is. If their goal is that this is their hobby farm and they're not interested in selling at the Sunday market, then they only sell here. But if they are interested in selling at the Sunday market, our goal is to open up channels that will allow them to do that. So we work very collaboratively. I was just there on Sunday, and many of our producers who participate in this market also participate in that market. They were all handing out pieces of marketing materials that we provided for them to let the community know that if there's anything that they're not seeing in the Sunday market, maybe wasn't available, maybe got sold out, or because that market isn't a year-round market, that if they really like this mustard, they can get it all year round at the North Coast Food Web. And so we've just kind of made a point to make it so that we're really lucky we're a nonprofit, so nobody's really threatened by us. Our whole work that we do here is to help the producer get to where it is that they would like to be, but also so that they can sell as much of their products as they can. So there was really no animosity or negativity when I was there on Sunday. It was really actually the opposite. A lot of people who don't know about our market, because it is an online platform, have learned directly through the producer at the Sunday market. And we're really lucky to have a community that is, collaborative in that way. It's kind of unfortunate to hear that there are communities that aren't as collaborative, but I did want to share that with you.
That's really great. And I think what we all hope to see, but I think it can be years long efforts to, have institutions work together closely. There does tend to be some scarcity mindset around funding and around who can buy and who will buy. And I think we all have to start learning some shared language around it's not a scarcity thing. These are different customers. The folks that show up at a weekend market 4 months out of the year are different folks, often different folks than want home delivery. I actually never want home delivery of food because I don't want to wait around for, the delivery to happen. I don't want a delivery window. I want to go get it. So I know it's cold and fresh and perfect. I treat it like the precious baby it is and put it in the fridge right away. But I am not everyone, and other people have different feelings about it. So I think we kind of all need to learn how to talk around this idea of scarcity. Our customers are not as scarce as we think they are. They are, if we need to make a bigger pie, we make a bigger pie. We don't have to worry about running out of pie. We can make bigger pies, but it's a long process, Christy. And I know you're like in it, and Aaron, I know you're in it. Carrie, it looks like you had something to say.
Yeah, thank you. I've had both experiences. So I've had a positive and a negative. So, and because I'm positioned in between the Grants Pass Farmers Market and the Cave Junction Farmers Market, and they are two polar opposites. So the Cave Junction Farmers Market has gone over and above to include the farm collective, and is now providing space. I mean, we're paying for a space, but they're allowing us to come in with multiple farm products and sell at the market in an effort to increase access of food to the community. And that is their overall goal. They want to support as many farmers as possible, and they want to bring as much diversity into the market, into the Illinois Valley as possible. And they know that as the season gets hotter, they lose a lot of vendors about middle of July and August. So, so they have actually made some exceptions to the market guidelines. One is they have a strict nonprofit guideline that says nonprofits can only provide educational materials, they can't sell products, and they've made an exception for the farm collective. Secondly, they have a rule that says you cannot resell someone else's product, and they have also allowed us to do that. Focusing on the bigger picture of accessibility to food and supporting agricultural economic viability of local farms. So that has been really positive. And I think because I've been a vendor there for 4 years, and I sat on the board last year and build those relationships, I'm sure that had some bearing on an acceptance of the situation. Now, on the other end, when I sat on the Cave Junction board and worked on marketing, we tried to build like a network to co-market, and let's put in dollars and create like a advertising campaign promoting Grants Pass, Cave Junction, and Brookings. Let's all, promote farmers markets. And we get no response from Grants Pass at all. They don't return phone calls. They don't respond to emails. I get nasty looks if I even go there to shop. And if I try to approach the market manager, she'll turn her back and walk away. I mean, it is uncomfortable and unfriendly. Like, I know that I am not welcome there. And they see it as very competitive in a very negative way. So I can just share that I've had both positive and negative experiences. And I wish that we could all just look at the bigger picture about growing our food network and the security and economic viability of our local farms. But some things are just out of our control.
This is so interesting, Christy. I'm so glad you asked this question, because I understood that you were not the only one before we had this discussion, but I don't think I understood what a common issue this might be. And it seems like maybe there's some work that I can do to try and understand who can help us with this, or what kind of help we as a network can create for ourselves. I don't know if there are best practices, but like, where is it that we can start building these relationships and in a meaningful way to try and have farmers market organizations understand us, much like we've done with the economic development districts. We've done all of that work. Maybe we need to do some work to have the organizations understand us.
Yeah, maybe
I'm
talking. I don't know who is Molly running OFMA these days.
No.
But whoever is, that might be an idea.
Yeah, no, it's definitely making me feel like we need to do a little bit of different work to
Yeah.
grow our network and gain some understanding and relationships.
Yeah, I wonder if there, like, it makes me think that maybe like where the area that we need to focus on for myself, for my own organization and potential food hub is like creating, doing more networking with the farmers market and with the farms on like what the difference is between us and a farmers market and what services we can offer and how we can partner with a farmers market, because like the board president of our farmers market is all in support, but then the farmers market manager, I don't think it's not that he doesn't support it, he does support the food hub, but and I don't even think that, I guess I'm probably speaking out of terms when I say that there's competition there, but there's just not an understanding of, so that like this whole conversation, I'm like, wow, maybe that's what I need to put together, is like really defined roles for what a food hub is and how we can partner with the community and the farmers markets.
Yeah, I think I will do some effort on figuring out what we as a group need to be doing. But yeah, it sounds like we all need to be working our relationships as much as we can and figuring that out in our own regions too. Hannah, you had a comment or a hand raise.
Yeah, hey, I was actually giggling over here because I'm seeding with Farmer Adam, and he's experiencing this in Silverton, and actually wrote an email to the farmers market because he's involved in the Silverton Co-op and the Grange, and just how like, hey, we don't need to feel this competition. It's opportunities for all of us, and not every all the things everyone said. But he actually had a particular experience this weekend of having a really bad market because there was the pet parade and no one went to the farmers market, and so came back with a bunch of produce. And he's blessed because he's a relationship with a restaurant, but it just seems like one of those opportunities when the farmers market doesn't totally pan out, is that where like a food hub could swoop in and help get the farmers things where they're going, and really serve in that collaborative way. And I'm also super curious, just like what our takeaway, and I wanted to say it out loud again, is that there's a food system council out in Bend. Is that what I heard? That's working between all these organizations
In Bend, no. I think Aaron Maylow is our Rogue Valley Food System Network.
Oh, that makes more sense. Yes. Okay, cool.
I feel like I should know about that if it was here.
Yeah, right, exactly. But
I'm Umpqua Valley.
Oh, sorry, Aaron. Umpqua.
Okay, we're close,
UV
just
Farm
north of
to
Rogue
School.
Valley.
We're all telling stories.
I've thought about that farmers market thing, but I don't want the produce that's been sitting on a parking lot for an entire day that got picked over and touched 5,000 times. That's not some product that I'm interested in. I've had people ask me that before.
maybe you could go into someone that would process it right away or something like that.
Yeah.
Institutional.
Yeah.
Well, Christy, thank you for bringing a great question. Obviously, a great question. That was a hot topic. And now I have homework somehow. Look what you did to me. Our next question, burning question of the day, is from Carrie. And it was about insurance. Carrie, you're struggling with insurance, and we would like to know more.
Yeah. It has really been a challenge. And I think I just have multiple issues that are preventing me from getting insurance. But now that the Farm Collective is trying to, now that we've separated the Farm Collective from my own farm, and I'm leasing my building to the Farm Collective, we were trying to find out like what insurance does the Farm Collective need for this facility, since I cannot get any insurance for the facility, like, do we need product liability? Do we need general liability? Do we need directors and officers? I mean, at what point does the risk justify that expense? And all of and you start to think about, like, all of our farms are required to have product liability. I did secure like a discount for all of our farms that are participating. It's not significant, but a lot of them that didn't have any product liability insurance before do now, which I feel like is a really positive step and a hurdle to jump over. But, you know, as soon as they transfer their food into my facility, then I'm wondering, like, who's responsible for it now? Because some of it's on consignment and some of it's not. What is that? What if my walk-in goes out? I mean, who's going to cover the 200 pounds of beef in my freezer if the freezer quits today? You know, I don't have a backup generator. Then I'm thinking, like, there's just so many things swirling through my head. And so we're just deciding, you know, do we need like directors and officers insurance? Because our revenue really isn't that high. We don't feel like, you know, I feel like we're really on top of managing funding and grant disbursements and that kind of thing. And yet we're so new. I just feel like we're really vulnerable. So I just wanted to open up the question and ask, like, what are other food hubs doing? You know, do you own your facility? Do you lease your facility? And how does that change the insurance that you have to obtain to cover not only the building, but also the contents that come from the other farms?
Yep. Erin Maidlow, do you have any response to that? Because you are running a nonprofit that is also moving food. I think you are pretty commensurate in some ways to what Carrie's doing.
Yeah, we have our own like liability insurance, and our insurance is really intense because we have contracts with Oregon Farm to School Network and like a contract with ODA, and so it has to fall under that. So, but we don't have, like, I've asked my insurance agent too about, like, since we're getting food from farms, do we have to have, like, is there special insurance that we have to deal with that? And she's like, no, not that I can think of. I think that everything we have covers it, which is like, you know, our own liability insurance. So yeah, that's a good question. Like, I would think, I mean, we aren't buying from farms, so it's still, the farmers still have to have their liability insurance, so that covers their product. So I'm not sure, like, Carrie, yours is interesting because it is consignment and you're holding it. Like, we're not really, we transport it occasionally, but we don't like hold produce. And then anyone that uses the kitchen, I mean, that's kind of a different situation too. Anyone that uses the kitchen has to have their own insurance. But I would think that if you've got your own liability insurance and then the farms have their own, like, I don't know what else you would need to have, right?
I think for you, Carrie, part of your struggle is that your revenues are not that high. So it feels like overkill in some ways for, you know, taking on these big policies. Is that correct?
Yeah, we don't have the income really to support, you know, an insurance policy. But I guess the real issue is the property insurance. Because of my location, I have been declined insurance by underwriter.
Carrie, I totally lost you. I don't know if I'm the only one, but you sort of disappeared on me there.
Oh, I guess I do have a good addition, Carrie. Do you have it in your contract? Christy just posted this in the comments, but do you have it in your contract, like, listed as additionally insured? for farmers to list you as additionally insured, like Josephine Farm Collective, you know, on their liability insurance?
Yes, I have them. Yes, I have them listing both the farm collective and my personal farm as an additional.
But that's, yeah, so that is true what Erin is saying, but what I was saying was in your consignment contract, it should say who owns the product until at what time, so that it's not an open question. So if something does go bad in your freezer, is it theirs or is it yours? That should be stated explicitly in the contract.
I think we lost you a little
We
bit again,
lost
Carrie.
Carrie's, yeah.
No, I'm still here because we have an additional issue about like doing the farm to school tours. No one will insure me the farm to school tours. It was like a contentious issue by all the underwriters. But I don't understand, why can some farms get a policy that covers educational programs and farm tours for kids and I can't?
That's interesting. I know. So, Carrie, I did some looking for insurance when I was looking at taking a farm to school contract. And like Erin Maidlow was saying, you know, the insurance is pretty heavy duty for those. And I had to shop around a fair bit to find somebody who would cover anything agricultural. Like the second I stepped out of my car onto agricultural property, that became an issue. So you may have to shop around out of your region and find a different cover for that.
Yeah, I've been shopping for a year and I've been declined by 34 underwriters.
Wow. Are you being too honest?
Yeah. That's what I'm wondering.
I'm trying to think who on this call or who regularly joins this group does farm tours. I think Katie Swanson does some, and you know her, correct, Carrie?
Yeah, I do.
You know, Travel Oregon's got that whole agritourism toolkit.
Yeah,
I would look in there.
that's a good idea.
Okay. The only reason we were able to do the farm tours this year is because the Josephine County Food Bank had funding for the farm tour insurance. They included the transportation and the insurance. So that's the only way we were able to do it this year. But I just don't understand why it's an automatic decline if I'm going to have kids on the farm, because other people are doing it.
Yeah, I just dropped the link to the toolkit that Chrissy just mentioned into the chat.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe there'll be some great resource in there. Any other thoughts on the insurance question?
I have just a little insurance. 1 second, sorry. As far as insurance goes for the food web, that's more of a facilities question. I do know a little bit about that. We do have our own liability insurance, as well as because we are renting from Astoria Food Hub, we're umbrellaed under their insurance. They're additionally insured on our insurance, vice versa. There's like a contract and a certain type of insurance we have to have. But as far as producers go, I kind of hold that here. We do not require to be additionally insured for producers who are delivering their products to us for distribution. We suggest it, you know, we do heavily suggest that they add us as additionally insured. It's free, it doesn't cost anything, and they will cover their costs and ours up to $1 million. We do have our own liability insurance, but you know, it is not a requirement. However, if you are storing any food here prior to our distribution time, we do require that you are we are listed, the North Coast Food Web, as additionally insured on your insurance policy. And then that you provide us with proof that that is happened before we will keep any food here for the market and for the storage programming. If you want to use our kitchen, because we do have a commercial kitchen program, you do also have that requirement as well, as adding North Coast Food Web as additionally insured on your insurance, and then providing us with proof of that. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but that's kind of how we operate our insurance programming.
All right. Other thoughts on insurance? I feel like we haven't been, I was hoping that we would have magic answers, because I know I haven't heard of anybody else getting denied by insurance so much, which is pretty crazy. Are there other thoughts on insurance from this group? All right, Carrie, I'm sorry we were not able to give you magic answers. We have one toolkit that we were able to give you on this one. All right, you guys, is there any last burning question that needs to be answered? We have about 10 minutes left in our session if we want to use it. Does anyone else have a burning question or not so burning question? Or should we take our 10 minutes back in our lives? All right, you guys. Until next time. Have a good one. Thanks, y'all.
Bye now.